is not here. Clay is not here. Okay. Good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock on June 7th, 2021, and I officially call this meeting of the Conway City Council to order. I'm going to ask my fellow council members to please speak into your microphones. If there's a consistent complaint, it is that people in the rear are having trouble hearing us. Can everybody hear me? Wonderful. Thank you so very much. We'll begin with an invocation and pledge of allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful to you for our lives, for this day, and for this gathering. We ask that you bless everyone who's present, their families at home. Help us to move forward in the way that you would have us go. We invite your presence and your guidance in this meeting of so much importance for the city of Conway. We thank you for your blessings and ask that you always be with us. These things we ask in your name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. I've been reminded, and before I forget, just to ask that anybody who speaks at any time from the audience, if you would please also, we'll ask for your name and address, but if you would please also write that information on the form that's prepared. That way, if we need to follow up with you, we'll have ready access to your contact information. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Hyman.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there Ms. Timms?
I second the motion.
Or probably second motion to approve the agenda. All in favor of the show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. And now for the consent agenda. Is there a motion? Mr. Hubbard.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Mr. Goldfinch.
Mayor, I'll second the motion, please.
Thank you, sir. We have a properly seconded motion to also approve the consent agenda. All in favor, if you show your hands, please. And that motion also carries unanimously. Item 5 is public input. If there's anyone present who would like to approach the city council about just about anything, now is an opportunity to do that. You will be limited to about 5 minutes. The only exclusion to what you can bring before us in this setting is anything that has to do with an individual employee. Of course, as we would need more privacy. I do know that there is one person who's called in advance. Mrs. McMillan is going to talk about this Norman Alley closure, and any and all of you are invited to follow her lead. Ms. McMillan? Okay, would you please come forward? And if you would, speak directly into the mic, because people also miss hearing from the podium. But if you give us your name and address, please.
Well, thank you. I'm Marshall McMillan and my wife Susan. We are the owners of 314, 316, 318 Main Street and 916 Norman Alley. And we learned about the agenda item in the Horry Independent. We were not notified about it. And so we're not well versed in what is getting ready to happen. And we're on board with the city of Conway and the downtown and the Trestle. But we do have some questions and concerns. And one, if the alley is closed, who will own it? Usually when a street is closed, it's divided between the owners. Who can use it? If one of our tenants wants to use it, can they use it? Who will control it? Will it be like the park at 4th Avenue and Main Street, or will it be something else? Who will profit from it? How can it be used? Will there be music in there? umbrellas, signage from the street or on the umbrellas? Can there be festivals in there? Can people have clothing displays in there? Could it be a pickup for buses, and not necessarily a month from now, but 10 years from now? Will it be screened from Main Street? And if so, by whom, and who will control it? Who will maintain it and police it and ensure it? Somebody gets hurt in there. Who's going to pay to upfit it? How will the existing sidewalk that's there now be used? Will it stay? And more particularly, how about the existing parking that's there now? There are 4 parking spaces that are parallel to the building that abut 314, and I assume that they'll be gone. And going down Norman Alley, there's a lot of vertical parking, and it comes from Main Street. And with that access being closed, how will those parking spaces be able to be used at all? And the front door access to 916 Main Street, 916 Norman, easy drop off, how will that be impacted? And the delivery trucks that go down Norman Alley now, I think the Trestle is a big user of those. But the fire trucks and the garbage trucks and the gas trucks, and if we have any work done on our building, such as cranes for the HVACs, roof work, that kind of stuff, how will that be used? And the long-term questions and concerns, ramifications, again, we just don't know about the parking spaces. Right now, we have an existing corner lot with vehicular access. We don't know what's going on behind us back where the fish market is. We read in the paper about condominiums and all the parking that's back there that's going to be consumed by other uses. And we think that any lost parking in the downtown area is not good, whether it be for landscaping or compactors or condominiums or whatever. All that's good, but the parking is important. And just to lose the parking spaces that are in Norman Alley seems like it ought to be better thought out. So we don't know what the traffic plans are going down Norman Alley. If the use is a temporary use and it's not a complete closure of Norman Alley, we don't know what the term will be. You know, is it going to be for 5 years or 10 years? And what happens at the end of that time? And we think that the people that benefit from the alley now ought to have some voice in what happens to Norman Alley. If we object 10 years from now as to how it's used, what is our recourse, if any? And as proposed, with the unknowns and the closing of the public street, we conclude that it's a more restrictive use, or perhaps no use at all for us. And basically it's a taking or condemnation in our opinion. But again, we don't know that much about it, but we have concerns. And thank you for letting us present those.
Absolutely, Mr. McMillan, and we appreciate your thoughtfulness. What I didn't say early enough is that public input is not interactive. We won't probably go back and forth answering those questions now, but I'm certain that as the presentation is made by our staff, that they'll cover as many of those things as they're able to right now. And there's always that opportunity for some follow-up with the administrator at a later time. But thank you so much, sir.
Well, thank you, and I made a copy.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Sarah.
Good afternoon. I'm Terry Bedell, the general manager of the Trestle. And the closing of the alley, everyone seems to think that the whole alley is going to be closed. It is not. The parking spots that are in front of their building, those will all still be there. The parking lot's going to be still there. What we have proposed is from Main Street to the corner of our building at an angle. And to put some more tables out there, I'd like to show you what they're doing on our wall. And we're trying to add to Conway. We're trying to make it so people want to come to Conway. So I really don't feel that closing this section along our building is going to hurt the alley, because you're still going to have access. You can come in the back way. Those parking spots, all of those are still going to be there. The parking lot is still going to be there. The cut-through alley behind our building, that's going to be open. Anybody can use it. There'll no longer be cars parked in that alley. They'll either be in the lot or in the vertical parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Is there anyone else?
Hillary Howard, Conway Downtown Alive. The COVID pandemic has forced small businesses to think outside the box. And for several restaurants in downtown Conway, that thinking led to the addition of outdoor dining and curbside pickup. When patrons dine outdoors, this downtown district is filled with energy and activity. The closure of the Main Street section of Norman Alley is a natural expansion of the current city alley improvement projects that are already underway. The permittable use of a parking space for Groucho's Deli to continue curbside pickup expands their net daily customer count, and it expands it for this establishment, and really encourages growth. Across the board, Conway businesses are outpacing their current growth projections. It's our pleasure to work with these restaurants and independent retailers to create innovative dining and retail options. Conway Downtown Live is thrilled that this council is open to the concept of shared public space, which encourages economic development in our downtown district. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Come forward, please.
Thank you. I'm Liz Gilland, and now for something totally different. I have two quick subjects to talk about: chickens and railroad tracks. Do you have preferences to which you hear first?
What was the first?
Chickens?
Chickens. All right.
Let's go with that one since you were so enthusiastic. I know you have considered revising the ordinance in the not too distant past, but I'm here to bring it up once again. I have a number of people who have asked me to speak to the council about this, and it's not an easy thing to do, nor is it a hard thing to do for me. The current ordinance does not allow chickens in town, but it is amazing how many people have chickens in town. Some of you may know folks. I know 2 people who have chickens indoors. That's got to stop. The concerns are things such as noise, of course. So you just write a simple ordinance that says no roosters. A clucking chicken when she lays an egg is certainly no worse than a dog barking down the street. You can do a simple ordinance that says you have to have them enclosed instead of running free range. It's not that hard. I used to live in Nashville. Nashville, which is a fairly decent sized city, has a chicken ordinance. So does Charlotte, so does Las Vegas. I could name you 71 cities that have chicken ordinances. I don't even know about the small towns. So I would just encourage you, and I would be more than happy to work with staff and see if we can't do a simple chicken ordinance that would allow folks to have a small number of chickens enclosed, no roosters in Conway. The other thing is the railroad tracks. There are 2 spurs in Conway. One of them is, and I meant to ride by and get the name of the road that runs behind the old Stilly sawmill that goes between 16th and 12th. You know which one I'm talking about?
Lakeside.
Okay. There's a spur that comes off the railroad track there. It ends at 12th because it used to serve Creel Oil Company. Hasn't been used in decades. The second one runs from the main line across the bridge by the Presbyterian Church, and it used to service the steam plant. When Santee Cooper started tearing it down, they also tore up the tracks, which they owned. And they stopped tearing them up when it got to off of their property, which is where the tennis courts used to be. Those tracks are doing nothing, and according to any definition I could find, they're considered abandoned. Steel is now selling. It's not a great price, but each track, each piece is about 200 pounds, and you can get about $20 for it. You're looking at $4,000 or $5,000, but even more than that, not so much along Lakeside, but certainly along the riverfront, it would look a whole lot better without the tracks. You can grow it over quickly because that's what's been done for the Santee Cooper property. And I would just like to suggest that the city do that. You've got the equipment. You could sell it for scrap or offer it to the rail line because those things don't go out of style and they don't change a whole lot. But I just thought that the idea needed to be floated because it's a few $1,000s, which can always be used somewhere in the budget. And it would make the area from the Presbyterian Church to the old tennis court site a lot more pleasant to look at. Those are my two ideas, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else present that would like to speak under public input? Please.
I hope I'm not out of order. Bill Taylor, 1501 Law Street. I'm concerned about the ordinance, not the amendment to the building code allowing standalone parking lots in residential sections. We should be making parking lots harder to get rather than easier. That cause our storm drains to fill up quicker with the runoff. There's no improvements been made to the storm drains in a long time. So they can handle barely what we're getting now. So adding more water going into them is a detriment to the residents. Not to mention the traffic and the noise of people parking and locking their cars, blowing the horns and stuff like that. Also, you got contaminants, your biological fluids and stuff like that that ends up in our water systems. Also the oils and petroleum from the vehicles, the antifreeze, the transmission fluid, all that stuff that ends up in our waterways. So, I mean, I think we should put more restrictions, especially in residential areas, for these standalone parking lots, or, you know, for these businesses that are on Main Street that want to come over into the residential section.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And if I might just say one thing in response, there's some details that are being worked out, but there's some things that are already being planned that would, I think, help you. There's some misinformation that's being spread, and I'm going to ask if you'll call Mr. Adam Emmerich. I think what you hear will help you feel a bit better about what might happen.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else, please? There being no one, I move that we close public input at this time. Is there a second? Mr. Jordan?
I'll second, Mayor.
We have a properly seconded motion to close public input at this time. All in favor with a show of hands, please. And motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda is item 6, special presentation, a discussion on proposed fats, oils, and grease control ordinance. I'm going to preface this by saying that I was traveling from another county on Highway 378, and there was this billboard sign telling people that they shouldn't pour oils in their drains. And I thought, who does that? Are you going to tell us?
Restaurants mostly.
Please, Mr. Friday.
Mayor, council. In the utility department, there's a growing issue with oils and fats in our sewer system, lift stations. There's certain lines that we have to wash out regular just because the grease builds up in it faster than we can remove it. And it's causing sanitary sewer overflows. And so what we propose is some amendments to the current sewer use ordinance that we have. It just kind of clarifies a little bit in more detail what is allowed, what isn't allowed. It allows us to go on site and do inspections to the grease traps, and they're supposed to maintain records on site. It's it's part of the Clean Water Act. We're kind of with the Code of Federal Regulations 40 under the National Discharge and with DHEC on-site sewer treatment, all of that. We're just what we've added is just kind of keeping up with that and allowing us to enforce those rules by doing spot checks mainly.
Thank you, sir. I certainly am new to understanding that as being an issue. But through such an investigation, you can identify, it sounds, the source of the grease that might have accumulated in a place.
And there's only a certain amount of grease allowed in wastewater anyway, so we can pull samples from the discharge and have it analyzed and see if it's over an acceptable limit. But grease traps are supposed to be cleaned out monthly, and the restaurants have to keep records. And not keeping records or not cleaning them out or falsifying records, all of that is, and mostly we never really pushed that in Conway. So I think the first part is just letting everybody know what the rules are, what they're supposed to be doing. And just that part alone will probably clear up a lot of it. Hopefully.
Sounds like an educational tool that might also curtail some of the accumulation of those contaminants.
Yeah, and in fact, what we put in here is like North Myrtle Beach, they have a book just about even drawing out the type of grease trap they have to install down to the details. So we're just trying to get a handle on what we got and look at other stuff later.
So our instructions are to have read this, of course, and to guide staff on how to proceed.
That's right. This is a presentation tonight. There's not a vote
Right.
requested. It's just
Exactly.
guidance. If there's any, it'll come back to you for a vote,
Right.
unless there's a reason you would like to be amended.
Mr. White.
Quick, I have about 3 questions on this. Can't have see my writing now. If when a new business restaurant, if you would, is opening, will they be given all this information prior to opening?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
When we're reviewing plans, they'll be. And most like a lot of the bigger ones that are standalone restaurants, these are all plumbing codes that they will be following anyway.
And if I was to open up a restaurant that was previously opened, I would be responsible for getting it tested and all that good stuff so that I would know where everything is and how much damage, maybe if I can say that, has been done to this area.
Well, if there is an existing grease trap and it's put in the code, then you would just, when you opened up, it would have to be inspected to make sure everything was in working order, but most of the infrastructure is in.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Goldberg.
Thank you. If I run a restaurant and we pass this ordinance, how much workload has just been put on me?
As far as the restaurant's workload,
Yep.
it's just mainly having a hauler to come and pump out the grease trap, or if it's a smaller one, like in an existing restaurant that doesn't have a grease trap or room for one, they can do a under the counter grease trap. It's just it's not that much more, just maintaining records and having it pumped out and not just letting it go into the sewer.
But the maintenance of the record itself has always been a requirement.
Yes,
Is that
it
right?
is a requirement. And they have to be kept on site.
Is this something that DHEC already regulates?
I'm sorry?
Does DHEC already regulate this?
Yes, they, it's in their regulations, their on-site wastewater systems. It's detailed in there, basically everything that's in ours.
Do they enforce? Does DHEC enforce?
They only enforce the health part of it. As far as maintaining records and stuff, they don't even ask on their inspections.
Does this mean we have to hire someone to go around and check these things?
We're gonna do it in-house with our current inspectors. We have two now that do construction and locates. We talked about cross-training a few other people to kind of fill in when they can.
Anyone else? Well, should there be any questions or discussion between now and the time to make a decision, I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thank you so much, sir. Item 7, public hearing and first reading of amendments to Article 4, use tables, Article 5, specific use regulations, and Article 9, landscaping and buffer requirements of Unified Development Ordinance regarding standalone parking lots in the professional and neighborhood commercial districts. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, this is an amendment that has been discussed previously at Council regarding standalone parking lots in professional and neighborhood commercial district. Currently, we do allow standalone parking lots in the downtown districts, but not in the professional and neighborhood commercial. And I want to clarify a few things that I know Mr. Taylor had concerns on. One thing that is spelled out in the ordinance, it does say that all applicable stormwater regulations shall be adhered to with attention paid to eliminating excess runoff and avoiding any potential for stormwater to be diverted to adjoining parcels. So that's something we're acutely aware of and the concern. And also this ordinance was brought forward in an attempt to keep these parking lots out of the residential parcels in the residential neighborhoods. This was to allow some commercial properties to have more parking on the professionally zoned and neighborhood commercially zoned parcels. But with that, if it's not on the same parcel, say it's across the street, it'd be considered standalone, so it wouldn't be allowed. But with that, with this proposed ordinance, we've also beefed up the aesthetics that would be required. You'd have to have a heavier landscape buffer and also a brick wall to make it look a little better. So this was something to help keep those parking lots out of the residential neighborhoods. But I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
I'm sorry. The brick wall, if you would, would that come before the fence? I mean, not the fence, the trees or buffer, if you would, or after it?
It would come after.
Okay.
It would come after.
And how much far back should it be from the roadway?
The ordinance requires that be set back a minimum of 10 feet from the sidewalk with landscaping in between.
And if I wanted to put a parking lot on some property that I owned that was not, that was residential, would that be allowed?
It would not. You would have to rezone it to one of these districts that allowed it.
Thank you.
Do you have any examples of what one of these parking lots
I do.
might look like?
You could go through a couple more. These were just some of the ideas that helped craft this ordinance to show how that could, what our intention was, if you allow this parking lot, you'd hate to just from Main Street see this sea of asphalt. We wanted to be able to maintain that feeling of the frontage, the facade of the building. So the idea behind this is to have those trees and that brick wall to create that facade when it's missing.
Would we encourage other than, what's the word, permeable surfaces, or would that be restricted?
In certain sensitive areas, our ordinance does allow that, but it is something I know we would be very careful to make sure that that runoff is contained on site.
And I'm thinking that would be a benefit just in
Yes.
terms of, we're certainly not putting a cover that just forces the water to go somewhere else.
Right, exactly.
Ms. Timms?
Mayor Catherine, when someone is desiring to put a parking lot adjacent to a property that they work with, they have to own this extra lot, is that correct?
Correct.
They can't negotiate with an adjacent property owner. And I was questioning a little bit the idea of the 36-inch height. Is that what this wall is, or is that lower?
I'm not sure exactly what that height is in that picture. I would guess it's close to it, between 2 and 3, but I don't know the exact measurements. That
Well,
was
I
just a
think
photo
the
that we
intent
had.
is to block the view of the automobiles, and this height wall does not. So I'd like to be sure that we're getting a wall high enough that would at least detract from it. I realize we don't want to go over the top of the car, but.
Right. And it is, the requirement is a minimum of 3 feet, but if that's something that
I'd
council would
like for us to
consider.
take a close look at that, because if it doesn't hide the vehicles, we've accomplished nothing. I do think that, you know, while I've struggled mightily with dealing with this particular ordinance, I think we need to realize that larger cities than ours have had to conquer this problem. When you go to Columbia and you go to Charleston and you go to places like that, they have parking lots downtown. You just don't see them.
Right.
Because they're masked quite well with their fencing and their landscaping, but that doesn't do it for me. Now, the previous slide did, because it looks like it's scaled, I don't know, vertical, I don't know, but anyway, the trees would buffer a lot of that, but I just want us to be careful about the height of this wall and not make it too low.
Sure, and we do, our requirements for the canopy trees, understory trees, and shrubs is a lot beefier than our normal landscape buffer, so it will be very dense in these areas.
And while I noticed that, I'm sorry.
That's all right, I was just gonna say, but in the winter, you're not gonna have all this foliage, so I want it to be equally attractive in the winter.
We do require that the bushes be evergreen, just to help with that concern, so that is a definite valid concern that we took into account.
I've seen parking lots in places that in which the brick itself isn't necessarily so tall that you don't see cars, but there's a combination of brick and iron, or brick and other materials, but they are situated in such a way that they're attractive.
Right.
The parking lot seems more distant and certainly isn't what the eye focuses on. So there may be some combination that gives us the same result as just having a solid brick wall that's, say, 5 feet tall.
Okay.
I agree with that. I think that there are other ways of opening up. I don't particularly like the idea of a solid brick wall facing Main Street either, but if you take a look at that one, when you dip down for an opening, I mean, you don't have a foot above the ground there. So I don't know. I think we need to take a stronger look at that wall and at whatever our types of walls are that we're going to allow. I agree, it doesn't have to be a solid brick wall. That would not be appealing to me.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Mr. Hubbard.
If it was zoned professionally, or any of the uses allowed in professional or neighborhood commercial, which is usually our more of the offices.
So I'd be able to put a parking lot with my office.
Right. Yeah. you
It's
would.
just standalone.
This would be, if this was the only use on this parcel, was just a parking lot. It wasn't tied to a business. It was just a parking lot only.
Mr. Belfast.
Thank you. Other consideration too with, like blackout walls or, just higher walls, it's crime. You've got some of these ladies maybe walking from their doctor's office and it's wintertime and it's 6 o'clock at night and it's dark and people can be hiding. It's just, anyway, something to think about.
is. I'm sorry, Mr. Emmerich.
Two things. This table, I believe, is 30 inches high. 30 inches high. So consider it 6 inches above this. It would block most cars, not the whole car, but the front of the car.
Not enough for me.
You can only go 4 feet high and a frontage anywhere in the city. So a 4-foot high fence, if you can think about, if you see any front fences in any yards, that's the maximum height anywhere downtown, anywhere in the city for a front yard. Second of all, this is a public hearing, so I need to make sure you know that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So this has been opened and council has brought up some questions, but this is also a public hearing. So this is an opportunity for any of you to speak on the subject. I think it's good that we did it in the order we did, because now you have a better overview of what may happen. But is anyone present who would like to say more about standalone parking lots in neighborhood commercial and professionally zoned areas? Yes, sir, please come forward. Give us your name and address.
I'm Gene Johnson. I live at 1105 15th Avenue, 1/2 block away from Laurel Street. My concern is, I've always lived by the philosophy that the devil is in the details. What changes do you propose to make to this ordinance that we can see and read and make our own judgment on? Is that available?
I don't know that we have
We'd like to see what changes you plan to make or would like to make.
Would you use that document and see if it, yeah, and I'm not putting you off. If that doesn't say it as clearly as you'd like, you can certainly speak to someone on staff later. So I'm not sure who was first. Ms. Timms? Thank you, sir. Was that all, Mr. Johnson? Was that all? Okay, thank you, sir.
Well, I just was going to say, while Mr. Johnson has a copy of that, nobody else does, including me.
It's in your
It's on your computer.
On the screen?
It's
Well,
34.
but I mean, the general public would not. Okay, so they don't know when they come to a hearing what they're objecting to because they haven't read it.
Excuse me.
I was going to make a comment to his comment.
Okay, if you think it'll be helpful.
Yeah,
please.
I do. I think there's a lot of concern. This was stated, I want to state it again. This applies to professionally zoned and neighborhood commercially zoned properties, not R1 properties. And that's an important distinction.
You talk about across a narrow street, or you're going one sidewalk on the street.
But all the houses on Laurel Street are zoned R1. They're not professional and they're not neighborhood commercial.
Both sides of Laurel Street are R1.
Correct.
Yes, sir. They're safe. That was important, Mr. Goldfinch. Thank you.
I'm Mary Childress. I live at 1201 Laurel Street, and I don't have objections. I just have a couple questions that I want to pose. The first of all, I'm not against growth. I know that it's important, and I just want to keep Conway a place where people want to continue to live in the residential areas. So I don't have an objection, but like the stormwater, the previous gentleman spoke about that this is on the books, but it's not really something that's checked and enforced. So saying that that's going to be enforced for the parking lot, I think that's something that the council should, specify needs to, how is it going to happen? And I know, good intentions, but as years go by, things can change if they're not. Also a question, and I should know this, but let's just say someone owns a professional lot that's adjacent or across the street from R1. Would it be easier for them to rezone? Like once this is in effect, could they rezone that easier because you have the professional lot that's adjacent or across the street? That's something to consider. You get your foot in the door, and maybe the next person that owns the land or the next. And those are just my concerns. I know we have the best intentions. And, you know, I live across from the school and things were good for so long, but now everyone's parking up and down the street and there's no cones and kids are running out to the cars again. And we keep, you know, I feel bad to keep bothering you with that, but it's just, you know, that's something we had settled, but time goes on, different people are enforcing things and it's not enforced. So I'm not against it. I just want to know more. I know that everyone on this council is going to ask all the right questions, but just please ask those and consider that.
Absolutely.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to try to answer a part of your question, and that has to do with what's going to happen in the years and decades to come. And I don't know that we can safely say what that will be, because you're right. Circumstances change, people in authority change hands, but I do know that there's a long-standing practice to avoid changing residential properties. It still does happen sometimes, but the character of neighborhoods does in fact sometimes change. And we do think through all those things as the changes are made, but we certainly, I mean, I can't predict tomorrow, let alone what might happen farther along.
I feel like this council has the best interest, and I know you have a different point of view when you live somewhere as opposed if you live somewhere else. But I think all of us want to keep Conway a place where the residential area is a place where people are going to want to continue to come and live and raise families. And not saying that this would prevent that, but just
and Ms. Torres, I don't want you to give up on getting back to a safer and more manageable situation at the middle school. I think it can be achieved.
Yeah, I didn't want to throw that in there on top of this.
But if it's gone backwards, please let us know.
I will.
Don't settle.
I guess that was my point. The stormwater is, you know, and then that would, we're going to enforce, you know, there's going to be a policy in place, but it's only as good as what people continue to fight for and enforce is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Mr. Gerald Finch.
Mayor, I move to close public hearing.
Is there a second? Mr. Hyman.
I would second Mr. Goldfinch's motion.
Properly seconded motion to close the public hearing. At this time, all in favor with a show of hands, please. The motion carries unanimously. Ms. Hyman. The next item,
First reading.
this is also first reading. So we'll entertain a motion relative to first reading on, I've lost my place completely, on the specific use tables, specific use regs, and landscaping and buffer requirements. UDO. Is there a motion? Sorry. In that case, I will move that we approve first reading on this issue. Is there a second? Mr. Hyman?
Mayor, I'll second the motion.
A properly seconded motion to approve first reading. Is there any discussion?
Before you vote, if you don't mind, I want to just kind of remind council and those that are in the public here why this came about, why this ordinance is even here. I am one who often says that we don't have a parking problem downtown, and I'll stand by that today, maybe not tomorrow, we'll see how things go. But we do have a parking problem on Main Street right now. It's a very serious parking problem, and it's existed for at least as long as I've been with the city, and it's only gotten worse with the development of additional commercial properties on Main Street. There is not a solution right now in our ordinance. There is no way to fix the parking problem that exists. And outside of businesses moving away from the sites that they've improved, that's it. Sometimes businesses get bigger than what they're able to expand to. And I hate to lose businesses, but that would be the reality if we don't do something else. So we wrote this ordinance at staff level to try to give an alternative to people having to move out from where they've invested their property and their money. So the concern that we had is the same as the concern of the community here. We don't want to see these businesses encroach into residential neighborhoods, but we're seeing it through just parking on the side of the street. We're seeing it by utilizing properties that are vacant, by utilizing other properties that were not meant for parking. And it's become a problem that the only way to address is either to amend the ordinance or start enforcing things in a way that's going to chase people out of downtown. And I don't think that's what anybody wants. So this ordinance was written as a means to provide an avenue for people to park in a legal manner that is designed in a way that is the least negatively affecting the corridor and the neighbors. So that's why this is here. And the concern about stormwater is a very valid concern. That's why it's written into the ordinance that stormwater has to be adhered to. And we have a whole other standalone stormwater ordinance that isn't part of this, that is in force, that when anytime anybody puts pervious surfaces down, they have to follow on in a commercial development. So I really feel like this may not be the only solution, but it's the only one that we've been able to come up with so far that might address the concerns that are out there. And so I just wanted to make sure that was clear going forward, that this is not, we didn't develop this in a vacuum. It's a specific response to a problem that we're having. Thank you.
You're welcome. So there's a motion on the floor. I'll call a vote. All in favor of approving first reading, show your hand, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item is public hearing and first reading of amendments to Article 2, definitions, Article 4, use tables, and Article 5, specific use regulations of the Unified Development Ordinance regarding commercial short-term rentals. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, commercial short-term rentals is something that we're hearing more about. These rentals they're more affordable alternative to hotels and motels. And we've had some developers that are interested in creating this downtown. From what we've learned from these developers is now folks, they don't want to go to a hotel and check into a lobby and get a key and have to wait in line. They want to book something online, open the keypad to get in online. It's just a different atmosphere now than it once was. And with that, folks want to visit unique downtowns like Conway. They don't want to stay in cookie cutter hotels outside of the downtown core. So with that, we had a developer that came forward that wants to create some of these short-term rentals in downtown Conway. But with that, it was not something that our ordinance even addressed. We had hotels that are allowed downtown, and we have residential units, but we didn't have this short-term rental that's kind of a hybrid of the two. So with that, we have proposed an amendment to the ordinance to allow commercial short-term rentals in the downtown and riverfront districts with certain conditions. So that is the proposed amendment that is before you. If you could go to the next slide, Brooke. This is, and also with that amendment, we have proposed, the ordinance currently allows dwelling units on the second floor only, but this proposed amendment also would allow it on the first floor, but you have to keep that that open business retail space on the front, on the first floor, so that you don't lose that vibrancy of the storefront when you're walking downtown. So this is some photos that show how that could be done. If you could go to the next one for me. This similar product was just completed in Myrtle Beach with the brewery below and these units up above. It's the same developer. If you could go to the next slide. And this is a sample of one of the advertisements for these units, which would be a similar look to the Conway unit. And that's a couple more photos. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
There doesn't seem to be a rush of questions, so I'll announce that this is in fact another public hearing and an opportunity for us to hear from our residents. Is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against these short-term rentals in downtown Conway? Ms. Childress, I'm sorry, but I need you to come up.
Just a quick question. Is this extend to the residential, or this is downtown or just city limits? That's all. Not just out of curiosity.
Ms. Hyman. You're welcome. Anyone else? Yes, sir, Mr. Hyman.
Mayor, I would just move to close public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Dwight?
Second.
We're probably seconded motion to close the public hearing at this time. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. And now for the first reading. What is the will of the council? Yes, sir, Mr. Hyman.
I'll make a motion that we approve first reading.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hubbard.
I will.
Mr. Hubbard.
I've been called worse, but I will second Mr. Hyman's motion.
I'm so sorry.
It was the glare.
I think your name is Jordan. Mr. Jordan, I apologize. There's an inside joke. I ruin everybody's names. We have a properly seconded motion, seconded by Mr. Jordan, Mr. Justin Jordan. Is there any discussion? There seems to be none. All in favor of the show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, ma'am. Item 8, first reading of ordinance ZA 2021-0621C, an ordinance to annex approximately a quarter of an acre of property located at 101 Clemson Road, TMS 15119020001, and request a rezone from Horry County Residential to City of Conway, low to medium density residential district. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, this is one of those that you'll see quite often. It was a change in ownership, and because the property receives city services and is contiguous to the city limits, a request for annexation is required. So that's why it's before you.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is one of those strange areas. We do have some parcels that are annexed and some that are not. It's a little gray area because of that. If you could go back to the zoning map for me.
So it's less than a donut hole.
Thank you.
It's like half the donut.
Yeah. As you can see from the zoning map.
So this is also a public hearing. If there is anyone present who would like to either speak for or against. I'm so sorry.
First reading.
Okay. I can't read and I don't know anybody's names. We'll just start over. Mr. Goldfinch.
It'll be okay. Mayor, I move that we approve first reading of settlements.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? All right. The real Mr. Hubbard. Thank you so much. We have a properly seconded motion to approve first reading of this ordinance. Is there any discussion? There seems to be none. All in favor of the show. I'm so sorry. Yes, sir, Mr. Hyman.
You said this was not a donut hole, so it doesn't appear to be. I'm just wondering how much stress this will put on our resources. I mean, if there's nothing.
No one seemed too concerned about it when I reached out to our staff. This is just one of, like I said, one of those areas. I know there's been concerns from council in the past about annexing in this neighborhood, but as far as our staff, there's parcels right across the street, so it wouldn't be a huge strain.
May I ask you this? If in fact it was more remote and would cause that kind of strain on resources, and if our department heads thought that to be the case, could the requirement that they apply to annex in be postponed? Is there a mechanism in place through which we could say we won't force them in now, but we could force them in later?
Currently, it's a city council decision.
I see.
We have to bring it forward to you and you have to deny it.
All right, but you could bring it, could you bring it forward later?
No, when they request city
Single
services,
time.
they must
I see.
ask for the annexation at that time.
I see.
So I have two more after this one where staff has actually recommended denial. So.
Okay, all right. Well, I know we sometimes do, and I know why. I just didn't know what the recourse would be if we wanted it, not now, but later, when there were more properties. Thank you so much. Anyone else? With our questions answered, now I'll call the vote. All in favor of approving first reading of this ordinance, please show your hand. And I will announce that Ms. Timms, yours truly, Mr. White, Mr. Goldfinch, and Mr. Hubbard vote yes. And now who is opposed to first reading? Mr. Hyman and Mr. Jordan. But the motion carries. Thank you so much. Item B, first reading of ordinance ZA 2021-1621D, an ordinance to annex approximately 3/4 of an acre of property located at 3026 Raspberry Lane, TMS 136003068, and request to rezone from Horry County Commercial Forest Agriculture to City of Conway Low to Medium Density Residential District. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, and this is one that staff did have heartburn about, specifically the solid waste department, because there is nowhere for them to turn the trucks around on Raspberry Lane. So this is one that staff recommends denial of the request at this time. And what that means is they could still get city utilities at this time, and they'd sign the restrictive covenant. So in the future, if the city does choose, that does decide that it's the right time for annexation, we can request that they do so at that time.
We can request, but we can't force.
We'd prefer not to.
Well, I mean, I just need to know what.
Yeah.
We could discontinue services until they
If
did.
they don't
annex.
come in.
Yeah.
Right.
I understand. Pardon me. Ms. Bullfinch.
Question. All right, where is this on case today? I'm trying to work.
That's Hemingway Chapel.
So everything sort of to the right, to the north is.
Oak Glen is to the bottom right of the map. If you can
So
see that.
that's
And
north, right? I mean, the top of the map.
the top is map. Yes, it's north.
It's going south.
That's right.
Okay. So there's nothing else out there. So to Alex's point, yeah, we need to quit. Our footprint's getting too big.
Yeah. We would staff, and this would be a strain on our services at this time.
Anyone else?
I move that we deny annexation.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. White?
Second, please.
We have a properly seconded motion to deny this request for annexation. Is there any further discussion? There being none, all in favor with show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously to deny annexation. Item C, first reading of ordinance ZA 2021-621E, an ordinance to annex approximately 4.18 acres of property located at 367 Frail Lane, PIN 07020009, and request to rezone from Horry County Residential to City of Conway Low to Medium Density Residential. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, and this is another that staff recommends denial at this time. Reggie was concerned, the solid waste department is concerned about how to get in and out of this property for the pickup. There are actually also a few mobile homes on the property. Just to give you a little background, but this is one that we do believe would be a strain on city services at this time.
Thank you. What is Mr. White?
Mayor, I move that we deny this as well.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second? Mr. Jordan.
I'll second, Mr. White.
We have a properly seconded motion to deny this petition for annexation. All in favor, with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Item 9, an item for consideration. Consideration of a request for shared space for the Groucho Delis located at 219 Laurel Street, PIN 36804020063. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, as you all know, during the pandemic and the state of emergency, the city was really trying to work with business owners and restaurant owners to keep their doors open. With that, we saw a lot more outdoor dining, as Ms. Howard mentioned earlier, a lot of curbside pickup. Groucho's was one of those businesses that took advantage of that, and they have been doing curbside pickup at the 2 spaces. Sometimes it's just one of the spaces in front of their restaurant, so that when folks have a carry-out order, they can just come right up and pick up their food. That wasn't something that really was addressed in our ordinance, but with it being a state of emergency, we worked with them as we could. But now that that's all. It's the end, hopefully. We really wanted to make sure that they were in compliance with our current ordinances. So we have asked them to, as you may remember, we did an amendment to allow restaurants to use shared space, which is basically using city property for their business. So they have requested to continue to do this curbside pickup. So this is just a request to bring them into compliance with our ordinances, to continue what they've already been doing. They just use it during their business hours, which is 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that's the request. I'm happy to answer any questions.
If Groucho's had requested space for a parklet, Can you give us a sense of how staff would view that request?
And that actually would have to go before the community appearance board if they wanted to do a parklet. But I think it's something we absolutely would be on board with if it's something they were interested in.
I thought that would be the answer. And where I'm going with that is if we would consider a semi-permanent cordoning off that area, if it's the kind of street that allows for it, if we won't cause any other harm to nearby commercial bits, to the businesses nearby. If we would have said yes to that, then I think that's the greatest support we could ever have for allowing them to continue to use that park. Mr. Goldfinch.
I want to say I 100% agree with what you just said, and it's important to draw a distinction. The same owner, that's not the applicant, but owns that entire building. So when we block that off out front, we're not impacting anyone else's business. And that's, for me, I'm on board. So if he wants to do a parklet, if he wants to do handstands, if he wants to do whatever he wants to do out there, that's fine with me because it impacts no one else.
Ms. Downs?
Do we need to put some sort of time limitation on these extensions because we may have a reason to think differently in 12 months or 24?
Sure. The ordinance doesn't require that, but it does require council approval. So if that's something that council wanted to
Well, I feel like it's something we should revisit. There are other restaurants up and down this same street that maybe don't have quite the ease of just pulling in and pulling out, but I have a little angst creating a space for one, have an extra space for outside dining and others not.
And I will say staff did visit all the restaurants that were doing this now and made them aware of the process and that they needed to come forward and ask for permission. So it was, Groucho's wasn't singled out. Other restaurant owners were told to about it.
Unfortunately, right now, the only other restaurant on that block has its own, I suppose, that parking. I don't know what their parking situation is, but they're on an opposite corner and there is clearly ample parking nearby.
And Coppers is going through the process of a parklet.
I see. Great. I would think that we might look at that favorably as well. Anyone else?
I think Alex.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
My concern was opening up Pandora's box as far as if it's not just a restaurant, if it ends up being Papa's General Store, or which would be on Main Street, but another store. At some point, that's my concern, is that you end up with every business having two parks in front of it with cones. Nobody's allowed to park. I'm all for helping. I mean, that's a concern.
And I would limit it. I'm sorry. I would limit it to restaurants because the ordinance allows for parklets for restaurants.
That's right. For an already permitted
clean,
restaurant.
That's clear. So
that's right.
And I probably wouldn't be as quick to vote favorably for an opportunity to pick up your food unless it would also be, because that's a semi-permanent use of a parking space. But if it's good for one, it seems to be good for the other.
Right, and Alex, and Mr. Hammond, I do want to clarify, the ordinance does say that shared spaces shall be permitted on city-owned property in the CBD zoning district as an accessory use to a permitted operating restaurant. So it was not something that would be allowed for a retail store.
And I would add one more element in that, and we use the Groucho's building. The owner obviously is on this application as well. And so if, for instance, I were renting a space above that for a commercial use, and now you're taking out my parking too, that infringes on me. And I would object at that point, but because the entire building is on board with it, I'm on board too.
Any other comments or questions? There being none, I'll bring this to a vote. All in favor of this annexation opportunity? No. We are shared space.
You need a
We
motion
don't have a
first.
motion. We don't have a motion. I will move that we approve the request for shared space for Groucho's Deli. Is there a second? Mr. Goffitch?
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a properly seconded motion in place. What is the will of the council? All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Item B is consideration for a request for alley closure and shared space for the Trestle Cafe located at 308 Main Street in Norman Alley. PIN 367-010100035. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, this is a similar request, although a little different. And I know this was addressed in the public hearing input portion of the meeting, and I hope I can answer some of Mr. McMillan's questions. This is a request to continue the shared space. As you can see, Trestle, during the state of emergency, was using these parking spaces for essentially parklets for outdoor dining. And as they mentioned, they'd like to extend that. If you go back to that first map for me, Brooke. There, you can see that they are requesting to temporarily close it. This wouldn't be a permanent closure of the alley. To close it from the facade at Main Street to the back of the building. This map shows the red is what they're using for the outdoor dining now, and the blue is the request for more outdoor dining. The yellow dots would be where the proposed bollards would be, and these would be removable bollards. So they'd be decorative and removable, similar to what we have down at Riverfront Park. So if there was, construction or something needed to occur, they'd be easily moved in and out, so that it could still be used. It would still be owned by the city. City would still control it. They would be allowed to have umbrellas like they have now. They would have to meet all signage requirements of the UDO and Community Appearance Board. So anything that was proposed would have to meet that. The only screening from Main Street would be those decorative bollards. They would be required to have insurance since they'd be using city property, similar to if someone goes for a special event or festival, they have to have that insurance. Like I said, with the bollards, delivery trucks could still get in. Parking spaces, it would be using those parking spaces that they're using now, but not the angled parking at the back of the alley towards Kingston. I think that was everything, maybe. So, but any other questions you all have?
I think one of the questions had to do with there being an emergency, and for example, if a fire engine had to come through.
Yeah, and that's why they would be removable.
Ms. James.
Something that strikes me, and it really didn't until you started talking about this. I think a street that moves into our Main Street, which is a nightmare any way we look at it, it can't be changeable. We got to get whatever it's going to be, and it needs to stay that way, either closed or open or whatever. Okay. I mean, I don't like this idea of one time you go down the road and it's open and the next time it's closed. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really bad process to go through. Secondly, I do think that other owners are impacted by this other than just the Trestle. Mm-hmm. And apparently maybe we have not included them in this discussion to the point that I'm ready to make a decision about it. I'd like to see all the property owners that surround this, even included in the back, because we're doing a whole lot of stuff in the back end of this lot, and it impacts more people than just one business.
Yeah, and I do understand that, and I think
it's quite premature for us to be making a choice on this at this point.
Mr. Hyman?
Mayor Catherine, the parks that are angled in the opposite direction that are up next to Mr. Millen's building, I'm assuming we would be able to re-angle those.
Yes.
So the entrance would be then on the, I guess that's Kingston side.
Correct.
Have we gotten any more input from, I know Mr. Sansbury owns, and I did see his wife come in, but I know they own the property behind that. Have we got any input from them?
No, we have not. We posted the sign. The ordinance requires that it's posted 15 days prior to this meeting date. We've had a couple calls of folks wanting to make sure that the outdoor dining would remain in some capacity, but I have not heard from Kevin specifically.
One more question about walking access. I'm all for, again, allowing people to better their businesses and that, but there is concerns with cutting off access. But as far as walking access, they'd be required to maintain an area where the public can still walk through it.
Yes, the bollards would probably have a spacing of, between 3 to 5 feet so that you could still get.
Where the tables would be.
Oh, yes, the ordinance requires that there's a clear path that meets ADA requirements.
And the sidewalk would be would be required to be open.
Exactly,
as well.
yes, that would not be blocked off.
Mr. Goldfinch.
Thank you, Mayor. Like Ms. Timms, I've got, love Trestle, love you, Terry. I want the best for the restaurant. I think it's premature. I got too many unanswered questions.
Sure.
I mean, are we selling this property to them for them to use? Does that open up, speaking of Pandora's box, I need more time on this because Mr. McMillan did raise some really good points and, to what extent their businesses are impacted. Groucho's was easy because no other businesses are directly impacted. This is a little more complicated and I'm not there yet.
Okay. Perhaps if we could get together quickly, the questions that we have, the concerns we have, might we postpone a decision until some of those questions are answered? Mr. White, were you going to say something?
Yes, just what you said. But I also wanted to know, could you show us where Mr. McMillan's building was located on there? Or can you see it from here on that?
It's
where the angled parking is it?
Yeah, it goes around.
Yeah.
Everything else.
Yeah, pretty much. The old Jerry Cox building.
That's good. That's, now I can see that.
Yeah.
It's easier to show you.
Well, I guess we can entertain a motion. Mr. Emery,
Prior to, if you don't mind, I hate weighing in on all these, but a couple things. Number one, the shared space ordinance is very new. Y'all just passed it like 2 months ago. And the requirements in the ordinance are what we followed for this. So there was never a requirement from this council to go knock on other people's doors or post it or anything like that, other than what we did in the ordinance. So it's not like it's been languishing out there for 5 or 6 years and we didn't update. It's a new ordinance and we followed the guidelines for that purpose. Secondly, and that doesn't, I don't have a vote. I just want to give you my observations. I eat at the Trestle regularly on Saturday mornings for breakfast and I sit outside. Right now where the tables are in those parallel parks requires the wait staff to walk from the restaurant across the lane of traffic to get to the tables. Anyone going inside the restaurant to pay or to use the restroom required to walk from their tables in there. While I was sitting eating this Saturday, 3 vehicles sped through the end of the alley. One of them stopped directly in front of the door and blocked the ability for the wait staff to be able to come out of the door and service the tables. There is a safety concern with the way it's set up now. And when we wrote the shared space ordinance, we wrote in there specifically the ability to close alleys as an option specifically for this alley. It was not brought up as any concerns at the time that were known to us. So forgive us staff for not, expanding what we did for notification beyond what we did because it's relatively new ordinance that we were trying to meet what your requirements were. But certainly delaying this by 1 meeting would not, frustrate, I don't think, the Trestle by that much. And it might allow us to work some of these issues out. But delaying it indefinitely or something like that would really defeat the purpose of that shared space ordinance that we did just a few months ago. So just wanted to weigh in.
Thank you. I think that's helpful. So I challenge the council to, it sounds like we will not make a decision immediately. Let's get answers to those questions. I think that will help everybody feel better about making a final decision. I certainly would like to see it happen. But I'd like to know that we've answered for the other people who would be affected. There's the dress shop on the corner, there's the McMillan property, just to know how those things will work out. Mr. Goldfinch.
Mayor, I move that we table this topic until we can have a more casual discussion on it, maybe a workshop, and hash out some of these concerns before we move forward.
Thank you. I'll second your motion. So with that motion being seconded, all in favor, show of hands, please. So this will just be tabled until there's further discussion, further information.
Mayor,
we'll
can I-
take it up later. Yes, sir.
And Adam, at least I speak for myself, is blaming staff. We don't know what we don't know. This is new to all of us. And, when you hear things concerns that make sense, you have to look into them. And that's, I think, what this is. So y'all keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you, all of you. Item 10, the city administrator's report.
We got a new microphone, so this is going to take me a minute for a learning curve. Hopefully it picks up better at home than the old one. I don't have that much, so I'll go through it as slowly as I can. On the next agenda, there will be the selection of the engineer for the Smith Jones Pool project. Once it's designed, then we can go out to bid for a contractor to complete the work per the engineer's plans. That engineering RFQ came back just this last week, so it was not in time to be able to get on this agenda. If you've been down 501 bypass recently, you'll notice that the center medians have been cleaned out. We've killed all the weeds and everything in there, and we hope to be able to replant with muhly grass and additional trees by the end of this fiscal year. So by the end of June, we hope to have it nice and planted and looking good. They have lowered the speed limit on 501 bypass to 45, which has actually helped us with the maintenance of that. Those beds, they're not getting struck as much by traffic, which is great for the trees that are in there to be able to mature. And hopefully it'll help us when we go to work on those beds to be able to have a little bit more safety. They were really unsafe before to be able to work in. We have learned a little bit more about the funds that we're receiving from the American Recovery Act. As you remember, we are set to receive $4.3 million, but the original estimate from Congress was $9.6 million, certainly a drastic difference. From what we can ascertain, all of the coastal South Carolina cities are in the same boat as us with the drastic reduction in the funds that we received versus what was originally promised. A lot of this has to do with the Treasury Department lumping cities together by metropolitan region. So we were lumped with Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach, Surfside Beach. The Metro Charleston communities were all lumped together, and that somehow negatively impacted the award that we were given, final award that we were given from Treasury versus what was originally estimated from Congress. The clarity of what has happened still isn't there, and we're still waiting for why that happened and how that has affected us. I will tell you that if we were not considered a metropolitan community, our award would have been in the neighborhood of 1.3 or 1.5 million. So we're still grateful that it's more than that, but we're still concerned that it dropped from 9.6 to 4.3. So we will not let it drop. We'll continue working on it. I know that North Carolina had something similar happen, and their North Carolina state voted to do a make whole provision, which their state took some of the money that they were allocated and gave it to those communities that were impacted. Certainly reaching out to our delegation would not hurt, although I don't know that there's going to be the political will to do that in South Carolina.
May I ask a question?
You may.
As I understand it, the SMSA in which Conway sits includes even an area in North Carolina.
That's correct.
So were they affected the same way?
Brunswick County was affected, as were all the coastal communities in North Carolina as well.
I see.
And that's where the make whole provision from the North Carolina state legislature made them whole. Again, I don't know that that's going to happen here. I remember there being talk from President Biden that this money is going to be game changing for communities. 9.6 million may have been, but 4.3 million just makes us whole. So it's better than nothing. Certainly it's better than 1 million, but it does not give us the ability to do some of those projects that would kind of take us to the next level, but it does help. So yeah, I'm certainly not complaining, but I'd like to figure out why we didn't get what we were originally promised. We have interviewed candidates for the planning director and city clerk positions, and we will have a recommendation for you at the next meeting for both of those positions. We have a little bit more interviewing to do for the city clerk position, and hopefully that will sort itself out by the end of this week. Our recreation department is holding summer youth sports this year, including basketball, baseball, soccer, and softball for ages 5 through 14. I believe we did this last year for the first time because of the pandemic, delaying spring sports. It was such a success that we're adding summer sports again this summer. And we were able to get through it last year, not only through COVID, but also through the heat of June, July, and August. So we're confident we can do it again this year. Also, our recreation department is offering summer youth sports camps all summer at the Billy Gardner Sports Complex, with different sports being offered each week. And also from our recreation department, the restrooms at Ladybug Park are now complete. The Field E press box and restrooms are expected to be completed by June 16th. And there are new sidewalks going in, connecting all the fields with the restrooms and press boxes, et cetera. And they're underway and will be finished by the end of this month, barring any weather delays. Also, their summer camp for ages 5 through 12 begins on the 21st and is completely filled in advance. Campers are expected to go on field trips, participate in arts and crafts and STEM projects, and hopefully have a great time this summer. I know my kids did when they went through it. Officially today, the 3rd annual Under the Lights 5K registration is open for December 1st. So if you want to pre-plan for your holiday season, you can get in on it early. And finally, my last thing is that we celebrated Mark Miller's retirement from the Conway Fire Department today. Mark started with the Conway Fire Department in 1987. It's always sad to see our longtime friends retire, but we wish Mark the best and hope he loves his retirement as much as he's loved our city. And that's all I have. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry. Mr. Hammond, you ready? You know, I always start with you.
Mayor, I've got one thing to say, and that's thank goodness for some rain. But I will, that's all I've got.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jordan.
Very brief. Thanks staff for all the flags that were out for Memorial Day. It looks great. And one last thing, congratulations to our seniors that are graduating next week. My kids were talking about that one day this week. No, they're not graduating. I'm not that old. But they asked how long I'd been out of school, and I had to think about it. And I'm celebrating 25 years this year, and it really hit home for it. So I had a niece graduate this year, and that these kids have had a rough couple of years. So congratulations to them. And that's all I have.
25 years.
I know.
Ms. Timms?
So when Ms. Timms says, go give Mr. Jordan a whole lot of sympathy.
No, you didn't in school. I wasn't expecting that.
I too was a graduate of Conway High School, and so I think that we are a testament to the fact that we come back and serve and continue to give. At any rate, I also am thankful for the rain that we had. My yard was just about gone, so I do think that we have had to do a lot of things to bolster our seniors during this past year and are continuing to, because they're still there. They haven't gone yet. And so if you see an opportunity to congratulate them in any way possible, please do so. They'd have heart.
cemeteries, and in particular Lakeside Cemetery. When I first got on council, I was assigned to the Lakeside Cemetery Committee, and it was initiation by Ms. Timms and some others that had been around. And anyway, got my fingers in the mix, and most of them were concerned about the flowers and the bushes. And I came to realize that the city had actually sold more grave plots than existed at Lakeside Cemetery. And so we actually had to go back and refund money, and it was a mess. So I know we're definitely out of space there. And that would have been something if they'd have gotten around to marking out the grave because someone had died that had bought a plot that never existed. So thankfully it didn't happen. But so there's your cemetery story. That's all I got.
I keep digging myself deeper.
Yeah, I don't plan to anytime soon. I don't think.
Well, I'd like to congratulate graduates on every level from our community. Remember, some of us can remember easier than others what pride you get in your school graduation. Mine was also from Conway, but at Whittemore High. And this would be my 51st anniversary. So you're just beginning, young man. All right. So we are, with those comments being done, we're going to go into executive session for a discussion and negotiation incident to the proposed purchase of property pursuant to South Carolina Code Section 3470A2. We will reconvene from executive session and may take action on the item that is discussed therein. And if you'd like to wait and see, by all means do. I meant to welcome all of you who are here. I sort of missed that at the beginning of the meeting, but we're very glad that you've taken the time to participate in the city council meeting. Thank you. Is there a motion to go into executive session? Mr. White.
Mayor, I move that we go into executive session.
Second. Mr. Hyman? That was a trick, wasn't it? We have properly seconded motion to go into executive session. All in favor with a show of hands, please. Motion carries unanimously. We're going to step downstairs so that we